Hello and welcome to this Pygame tutorial. Today we will create a game. We'll have a guy that can jump. He'll be able to walk. We'll do some basic animation and we'll create a floor. So let's get started. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is I'm going to assume that you've already got Python installed on your computer and that you've got your favorite text editor. For me, Python's best text editor, in my opinion, is PyCharm. I just really enjoy using it. I think it's pretty user-friendly. You can use whichever one you want, but this is my preferred one. So once you've got it opened up, you want to go ahead and click a new project. Let's just name this a game. Leave everything default in here. We won't change anything, and then click create. Now we'll wait on all of this. Now, once this pops up, let's just go ahead and delete all this default text. And first thing we'll do is import Pygame. Now, if you do import Pygame and it's got it underlined red in PyCharm, you can just highlight over the top of it and install package. Just let it do its thing. All right, once it's done installing, you should be able to go ahead and import math. We'll use that in our game. Then we'll move on. The first thing we want to do is initialize Pi Game. So we'll pygame.init. And then we'll go ahead and set some globals. Let's start off with screen width. And screen height. Let's go ahead and set these to 500 apiece. I think that's a pretty easy number. And now we are going to go ahead and import some images. But first, let's go ahead and get these images. So if you haven't, you can use your own images, but I have some assets that I've provided in the description below. You can go ahead and use those if you want. And that's the ones I'm going to be using. Okay, so if you go over to your project, you can actually right click and create a new directory. And we'll call this img for images. So let's do that and let's open it up. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste my assets into this folder. And now we should have them available. Let's go ahead and load them in. So what we're going to do is we're going to set default directions for the character. So we're going to do like char underscore r for character right. And let's do pygame.image.load. And we will import the file img/character. And you should have your options here. We're going to leave this to right.png. Make sure these are PNG files. Next, we will create char left. We will do another pygame.image.load. Then we will do img/char left. And that will be our left-facing character. Now we will create the window variable, and we will do that by when equals pygame.display.setMode. And we will set a tuple or tuple, whatever you want to call it. And we will use the variables that we created earlier, the screen width and screen height. Put these into this. So screen width for the X, screen height for the Y. Now remember, whenever you are drawing with Pygame, it doesn't go like a normal coordinate system. Okay, so now we will set a facing variable, and we'll set this to a string of right, because we want the character to start off facing right. And next, we will set the caption, and basically what this will do is make it where when the window loads in the top, it won't just have some default. Instead, we can put the name of our game, which we're just going to name it game right now. So what we'll do is pygame.display.setCaption. And we'll put in there game. Right here, I want to go ahead and put an animation loop to 0, and I'll explain this later. But for now, we'll just do animation loop equals 0. Now we need to set variables of ground width and ground height. and this will be what your character is walking on. So we will go ahead and set that to, we want the width to be about as wide as the screen. So let's just take that from the screen width. Now the height, we don't want it to take up the whole screen. So let's just set it at 50 for now. And we want it to be positioned at the bottom of the screen, because we don't want it like in the middle, but the best way we can actually do this and calculate it is, let's just create our ground X coordinate, and let's make that X as 0. So that's where we want to start drawing from, is over here. So let's make it 0. And now then our ground Y, let's set that to the screen height. That way it'll put it all the way at the very bottom of the screen. And then let's minus the ground height from that. What that'll do is that'll put that on the very bottom by taking the entire height of our screen and then taking the height from that. So to put it on the bottom, and we'll add the height, and that's where it'll start drawing from. All right, now we are going to create our player character. Let's just put player width, and let's just make him about 40. Then we can do player height. Let's set it about twice as tall, so let's just do 80. And now we have to position our player at the beginning of the game. So first thing we will do is we will do the player X and the player Y. This will set them at the beginning of the game so that we know where we're going to draw them at, which will typically be in the middle of the screen. So basically I take 500 and divide it by 2, so that'll give us 250. So that'll be pretty close to the middle. It'll be off to the right a little bit because of the width of the player, but that's okay. So now we will do the player Y, where we started on the Y coordinates. And what we want to do is we want to do the screen height and then minus the ground height, and this will put him right on top of it. We will want to minus our player height as well, because it's going to start drawing at the top of him, go down to the ground layer, and then ground to the bottom. Next, we will want to set a player variable of speed. So let's just put it at 5. We will also want to create a Boolean called isJump, and we'll make it as false. And that way, starting off the game, he's not jumping. This will be more understandable a little bit later. Next, I'll make a variable called upSpeed. And the reason why I do that is this is going to set him in the direction of up at 0. And this is going to be used in a function later on. Run equals true. We are going to create some character lists. We'll do char L underscore list equals. And now what we're going to do is we're going to import the rest of our images from earlier. We did the char characters for like our default direction. But what we want to do is when we create our animation loop, we want it to cycle through like 3 images to make it look like he's kind of walking. I know it kind of looks like he's dragging his feet, but for now you can edit it, you can modify it, make it better. If you want to, you can draw your own. I just used Microsoft Paint. It's pretty easy, and you can zoom in and make the character exactly the size you want and do some very fine editing. Okay, so your char L list, which is your character left list, we are going to start importing these. Char left. So what we want to do is we want to get our left, and then our left 1 and our left 2. Oh, don't forget your .png. I sometimes forget that. So separate it with a comma, and we'll set another set of quotes and do an image char underscore left underscore 1 .png, and then image char. Oops, see, I forgot my quotes. Underscore left 2. And then, now that we got 3, what I want it to do is I want it to kind of look like his hand goes back to the center position. I actually want to add this first one back into it so it looks like his arm comes back before it goes all the way to the other side of it. So what we want to do is we want to actually put this back in the list for a second time here. So what it'll do is it'll go cycle through just the regular left, then 1, and then the regular left, and then 2. And then it'll go back to regular left 1, regular left 2. So it'll kind of cycle back and forth, make his arm look like it's swinging. Okay, so we want to do the same thing on the right side. So let's do this list. And to make this simpler, we will copy this whole list here. We will paste it here. And if you select this and you in Windows, you can push Control R and just replace in that section. And we will replace all the left. Go ahead and replace left with right. And then we will just go through these 4. So replace, 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 replace. That way we don't have to retype it again. And just hit escape to back out of that. We need to set a character image. So let's do char underscore R underscore image. So just images. And then we'll set it as char right. And then char left image. And we'll make this char left. And then we will create image Pygame image.load. And we will make it automatically pull the image.right. And basically what that's going to do is that's going to give us our first image. So when it starts, it's going to start off with this image right here. Now you can make the code less redundant and probably simplify some of this, but for now, we're just going to leave the code as is. Now we will start a while loop, and what this will do is this will create a run, and as long as run is true, it'll continue to run this loop. So let's do while run, and we will do pygame.time.delay. And we will do 20. Now what this does is this will delay, it'll make it where this isn't going to run your run loop as many times as it can, as fast as your computer can. Instead, what it'll do is it'll delay it by 20 milliseconds. So that's like 2/100ths of a second. And then it'll run this loop again. And what this will do is it'll just keep it from going too fast or too slow. It'll set a nice pace for it. Okay, now we are going to start running through our animation loop. So we will do if animation loop less than 3.8, then animation loop plus equals 0.2. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to run whenever it goes through 2/100ths of a millisecond, it's going to run this animation loop. And if it is below 3.8, which will keep it from going out of our range, it will add 0.2 to this. Now, I understand that this is above 3, and if you know lists start with 0, 1, 2, 3, we are going to actually use the math, which we imported earlier, to make sure that it goes to the floor, to make sure it rounds down. So we'll do else animation loop equals 0. So if it goes up to the edge of the range, it's going to go back down to 0. All right, so now let's do loop equals math.floor of the animation loop. What this does is it's going to take the number from the animation loop and it's going to pull it down to the nearest 1. So now we are going to create our 4 events. Event and pygame.event.get. We are going to do if event.type equals, double equals on this, pygame.quit, then run equals false. Now what this is going to do is it's going to stop this run loop whenever you quit the game. Now then, we need to go ahead and do a variable for the keys. So we'll do keys equals pygame dot key dot get pressed. Okay, so Now then we are going to run through and see which key is being pressed, and we're going to animate accordingly. So if keys are Pygame dot K left, which is key left, and also we want to make sure that our player isn't at the edge of the screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another piece to this. So we're going to type and player X is greater than 0. Then we are going to ground X plus equals speed. Now what this does is this is going to take our speed and it's going to add it to our ground X. And the reason why we want to do it to the ground instead of the player is we want it to make it look like the player's moving, but we can continue to go on the platform. So instead, it's going to be kind of like an optical illusion. It's going to make it look like that the player is moving, but in fact, everything else is going to be moving. So we're going to do that. And since we're only going to have a ground piece right now, we're going to just have the ground to move at the speed of the player. Now we are going to make sure that it is facing left so that our animation will work correctly. So now we want to do our character left images, and then we are going to do pygame.image.load, and then we are going to import from that character list, and we want to pull the loop variable. And then we want to make the image equal character L image. So basically, whenever we pull this variable, it's going to load an image according to that list that we created earlier. It's going to find that through that number. So the animation loop, you remember we talked about that it would go down to the nearest 1. So what it does is say this is 0. It's going to go and it's going to plug this in to this character list as 0. So it's going to pull the 0 position off of the list. And if it was 1, it would run that, plug that in as the loop variable, and that would pull the 1 position, which is this. So what this is going to do is this is going to cycle through 20 milliseconds. And then after that, it is actually going to load it into the IMG variable so that we can plug it in on our player. Let's go ahead and do our keys right. Keys Pygame.KWrite and player X, player X. And on this, we want it to be less than the screen width minus the player width. So basically, we want it to be able to go all the way to the edge of the screen, but not let him go past the screen. Now, this doesn't really matter that much because we are moving the ground instead. But if you ever want to just move the player, it'll make sure he doesn't walk off the screen. But I like to leave it in there just in case I decide to change the game. Okay, I see what it did. Okay, so I put it as instead of that, I put it as parentheses instead of the brackets. You gotta be careful with that. Python's really particular about what kind of braces you use. Okay, so now we'll do ground X minus equals speed. And this will make him go the other direction. And then we want him facing right. Then we want our char image equal to pygame.image.load. And we want the char right list loop to pull that same thing. So if we're facing right, we want it to still pull off the animation loop and plug in accordingly. So now we need the img to equal char right.image. Now then, what we want to do is we don't want him to be able to double jump. So instead, what we're going to do is if not is jump, which means if he's not jumping, then we're going to allow him to jump. So if not is jump. And then we will check and say if keys Pygame k space is what we're going to use to make him jump. And then we'll do up speed equals 20 and is jump equals true. What this is going to do is this is going to make him launch up at the speed of 20. You can play around with this number and find out what works for you, but I really like what 20 does. Some people use square roots. I'm not a big fan of it. I think it looks a little bit more retro to have him just jump up and go back down. Of course, we want it to do the is jump is true. That way we can't push space again and make him do it until he hits the ground. So now we'll do else if not player y less than equals to screen height, ground height minus player height. What this is going to do is this is going to check and see if you're not at the starting place. Like whenever we first started creating the character, he had a certain height that he was at. And what we're going to do is we're going to check this. And we want to figure out if it is not at that position, then we want it is jump equal false. That way he can jump again if he's at that same height. And then we want the up speed to be 0. And then we want the player y plus screen height minus ground height minus player height. So basically what this is we are going to check and see if it is below this point. If it is below it, we don't want him to keep on going. We want him to stop, and we don't want the speed of him to be any different. Otherwise, he'll just keep on falling. We want it to be a 0, so he'll stop moving. And then we want the is jump off so they can jump again. So you may get a little glitch where it'll kind of go down below the ground just a hair, and then it'll come right back up. It's quick. But for now, there are fixes to this, but for now, that's what we're going to do for this tutorial. Okay, now we're going to do an else. And we are going to do player y minus equals up speed. So this is going to take the up speed. So if it's 20, it's going to start pushing him at 20 pixels up, but it's going to subtract. So what we need to do is we need to do up speed minus equals 1. Basically what it's going to do is it's going to start at the bottom, and when you hit jump, it's going to go 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, all the way down to 0. Once you get to 0, he's not going to be moving up anymore. So then it's going to start going into the negatives. So then it'll go -1, -2, -3, and it'll go all the way down as fast as it gets to, according to the loop. But once it gets down to the bottom, it's going to check this, and it's going to go, wait a minute, we're down below where he started. So we're going to set the is jump to false, and then we're going to set the up speed to 0. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to make it where we're drawing all of this onto the screen. So the first thing we want to do every time it runs through this loop is we want it to fill with a color. And let's just do blue. That's what I used, and it seemed to look good. You can type in a string in here, and Python will actually fill it with a blue color. You can use RGB colors if you want, if you got more of a preference. But for now, for this tutorial, we'll just use a simple blue. And now we will do an image set color key. What this is do is this will remove the background on our pictures. On our pictures, he's got a white background. We want that to be gone. So we'll set a color key, And we will make that white. That'll pull the white out of that and make him look like he's more transparent. And then we will do a character R set color key. I know this is kind of redundant, but sometimes the pictures don't work if you don't do it this way. And I've noticed that whenever I've got the character changing direction, sometimes the background will change back. If you guys have got a better option, feel free to leave me a comment and let me know how to change it and make it work better. But for now, I just have to set the color key on both of them. Okay, so we'll do if facing equals right, then when dot blit is basically just drawing it, and we will do the character image. So we'll do the character R image since we're going right, and then we will set another tuple in there for the player X and player Y position. So basically this will just draw that player exactly where we're at. And then we will do else for our left, because we're not going to have any other directions at this time. If you do, then you'll want to put facing up, down. If you're not going to do it like just two directions, if you want to do up, down, you're going to have to do an if statement for the left for everything else. So now we will do when.blit character left image, and we'll set the positions again, player Y. And now we will do pygame.draw.rect for rectangle. And then we will draw it onto the win, which is our window. And then we will set color to a brownish color. I guess I should explain we are drawing the ground here. So I found that a nice brown color was an RGB color. You can use this one or you can change it, but we're going to do 168, 94, 50. And then we will add it in ground X, which is the variable we created earlier, ground Y, and then we will make it the width and the height that we set earlier, ground height. And that will be our ground. And then we will do pygame.display.update. And this will actually make it updated onto the screen. So now then, we are done with our loop. So whenever it quits, we want to make sure that it closes out our Pygame library. So to do that, we need to make sure that you're over on the far left indentation and go ahead and type pygame.quit. That will make sure that it closes out. So we have all of our code. Let's see if it actually works the way we want it to. So hit play. We'll check for bugs. Okay, we've got a bug right away on line 87. It says when blit character R list. So let's go down here to 87. 87 says when blit character list. So we got character. So when.blit character R. Oh, see, we did list instead of image. So that's my bad. So now it should work. The good thing is you can usually look at your other code and tell if you've messed up or not. So let's play it. Now then, we've got our character. We got our blue background that we created with the RGB colors. We created the ground with the RGB colors. We created this with a string. Okay, so now then left stopped working. So let's see what we got here. No file image character 2 found in working game. So we need to go back up here and figure out what I did wrong. So line 60. So it's checking the loop. Chart left. Chart left. Oh, so I forgot to put .png on the end of this. So we'll do .png. Okay, sometimes we got debugging to do on this stuff. So now let's try it again. So now our jump is working, our left and right is working. So it looks like we've got a good working game. Now you will notice if you step over here that you don't fall off the edges. We'll go ahead and make it do that on another tutorial, but for now, this is where we're going to stop. Thank you guys so much. If you liked it, please like and subscribe so that I can create more content. And if you've got any suggestions, please make sure to comment them, and hopefully we can build some better stuff together. Thank you.